Hey guys, and welcome back to ScarletSprites. Gonna try something a little bit different today. The merging of two worlds, kind of looking at the emulation side of things as well as real arcade hardware, sort of. So let's talk about the game that's getting a lot of attention recently, and that is XMen Arcade. And this is undoubtedly because of the Arcade1Up machine that has been announced. And a lot of people, I think, were clamoring, ready to grab this. I mean, people have been asking for this for a while. And then the price came out, $700. Now, I have not been the biggest fan of Arcade1Up. I think everybody knows that. But more recently, I think they've done some things that have addressed some of their quality control issues. The cabinets themselves, you know, they're still too small for my liking, but I did like that they changed the shape and body style up a little bit to kind of make a nod back to the original machines that they're based off of. $700. I mean, that is a lot of money to be dumping into an Arcade1Up machine. I think some of you diehards out there are probably even thinking like, this is probably a jumping off point, like maybe wait and see if this comes down in price. You know, there's a holiday sale, Black Friday. That's just a lot of money to spend on something. Now for me, I was fortunate enough to pick up a genuine XMen arcade machine. Overall, it's not in terrible condition. It only needs a few things.
And brakes, brake pads, lining, steering box, transmission, rear end, maybe new rings, also mufflers, a little wiring.
Well, shit, I'm going another direction. Now, fellow YouTuber The Rexer Show recently asked, is this game overrated? And boy, you're kind of prepping yourself for war by throwing something like that out there, because you've got multiple things going on with not only video games and video game companies, and then you've got the whole Marvel versus DC thing going on. But I don't know. There's a valid argument to be made either way, I think, on this game. It's an early beat 'em up. Beat 'em ups notoriously are kind of just quarter munchers, so I see that side of it. And if you look at a game like The Simpsons, where you can kind of pair up with a second player, and there's those tag moves that you do, I don't want to say it's deep, but there's more to The Simpsons than there is, say, X-Men. But I think it's the licensing. It's the fact that you're playing as the X-Men, right, that makes this whole thing popular and was fun as a kid. I think that's where, you know, this really comes into play, because I mean, I was a big Marvel fan back in the day. See here, I got some Marvel books here somewhere. Yep, just yep. Well, anyways, I was a big Marvel fan. So yes, if this was something like Justice League, I would have been all in on this. I'd be hyped. I don't care how shitty the game is. I would definitely want this. I'd want to be playing it. I'd be hyped. Hell, I'd be hyped for the Arcade1Up machine too if I was a big Marvel X-Men fan. But yes, I will admit it, I am not a Marvel Comics fan. I've been a DC guy through and through ever since I was young. I think if I had been a Marvel fan, I probably would have picked up the real arcade board for this for use in one of my machines. I did pick up G.I. Joe, Sunset Riders, and The Simpsons. I just never got around to picking up X-Men. So let's go out and take a peek at eBay, and we'll see what this board is going for. And yeah, it's about 400 big ones. But now looking at that as our base price, $400 to play X-Men on original hardware versus $700, we're starting to get a little bit closer to that Arcade1Up pricing. Now, I personally would view the original arcade board, there's more intrinsic value to that from a collectability standpoint to me than there is the Arcade1Ups, but it's still $400. So it's a big chunk of change to put forth for one game. So how else are you gonna play this? Well, I did see that back in, I think 2010, Backbone Entertainment published this for the PlayStation 3 as well as digitally for the Xbox 360. I don't think I was smart enough to pick that up for the Xbox 360. And the wording on this is a little off to me, and maybe it's just semantics or maybe it's just me, but that seems to indicate to me that something else has been done to the game. I don't know if it's an enhanced version or how it's different from the arcade, but it doesn't say it was ported. I don't know. It could be semantics, but if it is different or there are some subtleties to it that make it vary from the arcade game a little bit, feel free to shout that out in the comments. So look, I'm not going to spend $400 on the original arcade board. I'm definitely not going to spend $700 on the Arcade1Up, but thankfully there are still many ways to play this game. And I think this is funny because I think a lot of people assume that I'm this diehard play on original hardware or bust kind of guy, and sometimes that might be true depending on the game, but I do have a RetroPie set up in my game room. I'm no stranger to MAME by any stretch of the imagination, and I don't think that anyone should be if you want to play and experience arcade games, because collecting those boards right now is astronomically expensive, and quite honestly, you're never going to go out and search and find all these different unique games that some of them you might not have ever even known existed, and MAME and emulation kind of opens the door to that library for you. So there are dozens of ways to do this. I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way for today's video. I'm going to go out to mamedev.org and download the latest version of MAME. Next, you'll want to create a place to extract this file to. I just created a folder called MAME. Then copy over the file you just downloaded to this folder and extract it. Now here's where I think a lot of people get themselves into trouble. You gotta look at the version of MAME that you have installed, and that can be shown right here when you boot up MAME. Now the ROM files, or your game files, have to match the same version of MAME. You could run into a lot of problems if they don't, and that's when people start posting things in forums and Reddit about this not working. Make sure these match up to avoid any type of trouble. And here I'm going to show you where I grabbed my version of XMen for the latest version of MAME. Now after you've downloaded that, you're going to drop your XMen file into the ROMs folder on MAME. Now the next time we start MAME, we should see XMen show up in our games list. And that's really it as far as installing things. So now we're going to double click that. You'll see when this first starts up, it says that there are some known issues with this game in MAME. It's kind of nice because it lets you know what's still being worked on, but overall the game still plays pretty well. And now what you want to do is press the Tab key on your keyboard. This will pull up the option menu and allow you to configure your joystick. I use an 8BitDo SN30. It's basically a Super Nintendo controller, but it's pretty good. It works really well for a lot of arcade games. And to configure the buttons, you're just going to go through, double click on your directions, and then just press the corresponding button or direction on the D-pad to match up. I like to make the select button the coin button. So this is how you're going to coin up in the game, and then start can obviously be your start button. So once you're done here, you hit escape a few times, go back to the game. You can press select now without rebooting, and you should see the game register a coin. And you're off and running software emulation on an LCD, at least in my case. So really not a whole lot different than playing this on an Arcade1Up. You just saved yourself $700. I know you didn't get that nice cabinet that you wanted, but hell, it's $700 cheaper. And I'm not ashamed to admit it. This is how I will play XMen, either on my PC or on my RetroPie. Now it would be really cool if somebody started working on a core for the Mister, but I guess we're gonna have to wait on that. So I will say, before I recorded this video, I did get this up and running just to fool around with it for a little bit, and I ended up playing through the entire game. So say what you want about it, you can call it overrated, but there is an addictive quality to it, which was the entire intent back in the day, to steal your quarters and make you keep playing. The fact that this was a multiplayer game too, that you could, work your way up to Magneto with your friends, 4 players or 6. I mean, there was a big ass 6-player cabinet for this thing too. And the last time I think I saw this machine was 6 years ago at 16-bit in Cincinnati. and we did get 6 people jamming on this thing. We had such a good time. One person got, it wasn't me, got completely carried away, and it ended up, the right monitor in the thing ended up going out. The game still was running, but the right monitor was out. So I hope they fixed it. It wasn't the old Joe's fault. I just want to be clear about that, because I'd like to come back to 16-bit at some point. It's been 5 years. There's a statute of limitations on things like that, I'm sure. So definitely let me know in the comments what you think of XMen Arcade. Is it overrated? Also, let me know if you're buying that $700 Arcade1Up machine. There's no judgment on my part. Spent plenty of money on other things, including arcade boards. Not this one in this case, but how you spend your money is your business. But if you're grabbing that, I definitely would like to know. I mean, it might be your favorite game, and you're like, I just have to have this. And that's a perfectly valid reason. Sorry, she is wearing pants, isn't she? Maybe there's a reason Professor X wants you out of the room so fast. Thanks so much for watching this slightly different ScarletSprites video today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you all next time. Later, guys.